Hey guys, it is Sandpit Danny here. I am really looking forward to today's Barrels and Business podcast with the incredible Jade Green, exit stage left. And in the back there, brewing today's refreshments is Mr. Glen Casey, the exiled Mexican who's from the lands of Torquay, but now making his home in the beautiful Lennox Head hinterland, which is where we've set up this campsite. Big thanks to Yeti for their campsite equipment. And we will be joined by Ruby today as well. Who
Ruby's the co-host.
We probably not got much choice in the matter. What do they say? Never work with children and dogs.
What about white dresses and dogs in a red dirt area?
Yeah. So
you like me?
Yeah, Ruby, you just behave yourself there, and she just wants to be right in the middle of the show.
Yeah.
It looks
Pretty
like.
much.
Well, she wanted her
Right
own
centre of
microphone
attention.
before, so that's going to be great. I'm going to jump up just for 2 seconds. Can you, Danny, just tell them why are we doing this three-way? How did this happen?
Well,
Watch out, Rubes.
the reason I suppose we're doing this three-way is Jade and I both have very similar interests in we love barrels, and we also love really interesting people who have got a great life story and a few yarns to tell and have paved their way in the business world with surfing as their passion always there in the background, and it always creates a very interesting story and the direction that people's lives take as a surfer is always going to be influenced by their love of the ocean, and also the way that they kind of lens into decision making in their lives of an ethical way of being considerate about their environment and nature. And yeah, and Case is a pretty prime example of that and some of the decisions that he's made. And he's a legendary waterman, big wave charger. He's got gonads size of pineapples.
Slowly shrinking.
He's a bionic man with brand new hips.
Yep.
One on each side?
Yeah, got both replaced. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear that story.
Yeah.
And
Struggle.
yeah, so Glen's got some great business tips as far as building up teams in his journey through establishing brands in the surf industry and dealing with the changing nature from the very beginning of when it was very grassroots. What did you say before home?
Well, it was a cottage industry, so everyone was at home sewing board shorts. So it came from
Having their jumpers knitted.
Yeah, had jumpers knitted. I was talking to Wayne Lynch the other day, and we were looking at a photo when he was 14, and he said the shirt was adjusted, the jumper was knitted, and the pants were refitted. So everything was made before we had surf clothing or the brands started to make surf gear. So that's where it went into a cottage industry, and then all of a sudden they started going into factories and then offshore eventually.
So when you first started with the Rip Curl back in 1982, I believe it was?
Yes.
What was Rip Curl then?
Well, Rip Curl was essentially a wetsuit company that decided to... They actually got a fellow who ended up at Billabong, Doug Spong, and Doug came in and sort of started developing a little accessory and clothing line. And so they developed a hooded wind cheater with this massive, big Rip Curl on the sleeve. And it was just this unusual shape that hadn't really kind of been... It penetrated a little bit, but the hooded fleece or hooded sweaty kind of came in and just went nuts. Every menswear, because there was menswears back then. It wasn't surf shops. It was little corner stores with mum and pop, and then he came in with a backpack. And so we had these two items, which literally, I think, we started out at 300,000 K of this stuff, and then ended up within, I think, 2 years or something, we were doing, $3.5 million. And so there was just this incredible growth, and everyone wanted surf, and it became the it thing.
And how much did aligning the brand with these mysterious, enigmatic surfers, how did that take things to the next level? So Wayne Lynch back then, he was an extraordinary character. Nobody really knew much about him.
No.
And so how was he tied into?
Well, yeah, like basically I I used to see Wayne every Friday arvo at the boardroom meetings, which is another name for a piss up, really. A lot of beers after a few barrels, But essentially, he, for everyone in Victoria, he was the most successful surfer of all time, but they marketed him, even though authentically he was this soul surfer that just disappeared, and I think he literally turned up to, get whatever he needed and a roll of cash, and then he'd just slip off and go surfing again down the coast. But I think as far as it's gone now to your Dave Rastovich's and your other styles of free surfers or soul surfers or influencers or whatever, it's very important to have those sort of associations with your brand, because people want to be like that guy. Like I wanted to be like Wayne, so and I wore him down and ended up in the back seat of his car for about 30 years. So it worked. The marketing worked.
Or the front seat of his Zodiac.
Yeah, the front seat of his Zodiac. Yeah, exactly. So they were good times.
Oh, where are you going with this?
I know.
Yeah, the surf industry, if I can talk a little bit about it, it had this kind of incredible growth, and Phil Jarrett wrote this amazing book about suits and salts and suits, and so at a certain point, a lot of the surfers only knew how to wax up and zip their wetty up, and so they ended up having to get this help from the MBA style accountant or the the very advanced skill set of some leaders or management type people, and so they brought this in. And I think, I was there at the time, and it was good and bad, and there were some ugly parts of that. But I think in the end, this type of mentality, and I'm not putting that mentality down because it's there to build business and get the growth and stabilise your supply chain and build incentives for your staff and that. But it ended up that it just got greedy and it got really out of control and it oversaturated. And with all a brand is kind of like a child, or it's like a soul. So it has this growth, and then the child grows, and then it goes into this middle age and gets married and has, and then he goes out and gets crazy and makes heaps of money and buys 15 houses. And then he goes through the midlife crisis. Well,
and a Ferrari.
Yeah, got a red Ferrari.
Yeah,
and,
got to have the red Ferrari.
So that midlife crisis really hit the surf industry, and it's just starting to come back out of it now in a whole new way.
Because I suppose every brand has to appeal to to its demographic, to its target market, and if you're appealing to surfers, we really do care, like you said, about the soul of something, and surfers are essentially we're rebels. You know what I mean? We don't want to fit into the mainstream. So how does a brand balance those two things between being successful and turning a profit for its shareholders? And expanding and growing and building new stores, but not isolating its demographic by becoming, part of the corporate mainstream world?
Well, I think this is kind of pretty overused word at the moment, which is called sustainable. Mm-hmm. And so, there's 7 billion people on the planet, and you can't kind of come up with a no harm policy. We're all going to, not one human on the planet doesn't do some type of harm. So all we can say is let's do less harm and let's build better values and build better companies with mission statements and all that has the balance of both aspects. So you have your MBA guy and your all your intellectual sort of stuff, but you get that MBA guy to go out and walk in nature and go for a surf, maybe have a couple of mushrooms, and just expand that kind of guy, because that kind of guy he's a bit of a weapon. He's a bit of a machine, but if he doesn't get into nature and find himself and find his soul, the company's always going to have a sustainable end of life. It's sustainable, and then it hits an end of life, and so it's a destruction because he's not knowing himself. He doesn't know how to look after his staff. He doesn't know how to balance his life. He doesn't know how to come home and hug the kids. He's still doing emails at 12 o'clock at night, or he's getting up at 4 a.m. and running to the office. So his life, he loses juice. He's got no gas. He's got nothing in the tank. And so the business goes with his energy, because everything's energy.
So when I look at you and what you've done with brands like Rusty and Patagonia, and now working with Yeti and Pure Scott, what would you say are kind of your main sort of attributes that has been able to sort of take something that's already existing? So say with Rusty, there was already the Rusty surfboards, and then, you know, building the clothing, and with Patagonia, which came from Chile and you brought it into Australia. What are the main attributes that you have that were able to take these brands and build them from where they were to $100,000, $200 million worth of sales?
I think you just have to recognise it's like an appearance of growth. So you go into a marketplace and you don't force and dominate and try and control, say, a little mum and pop surf shop with your product. You go in and you ask them, you know, do you think, you know, can we have a little relationship? Can we work out a little spot where we can put the product? And then you let it grow organically. And what I saw when I was in the surf industry and building brands like Rusty, and then when I started Patagonia, was that there was a lot of, I won't say charlatans, but really manipulative type people playing games.
Used car salesmen
trying to, I'll put a sign up there, I'll put that in there, you know, rah, and then they come back and they still got the 120 T-shirts. Instead, if you had walked in and gone, I'll give you 10 and I'll give you all the help I can, and I'll even come in on Sundays and make
help
you
you
tea
merchandise
and help you. And so, you know, and if you put your heart and soul into it, the word soul again, which is a bit overused, but you're making a contract with another person that you care about, and you're not gonna rape and pillage and run away going, oh, I've got 120 T-shirts in there. So it's conscious. It's got a spiritual aspect to it. There's all sorts of balance that we've all got to come back to in business, which is just not my way or the highway and get profit and you know, and come home with a $1 million order.
It's really interesting, Jade, isn't it? Because when we think about sales in business, like the sort of term like aggression and like hitting hard and dominating is something that, you know, seems to probably be, you know, prevalent in a lot of the way people approach sales. But what Glen's saying is really interesting in that it's taking a step back and building relationships.
Yeah. Well, it actually reminded me my first job out of high school. So I had the opportunity to go to university, which I did not want to do. And one of my school teachers actually owned the local Evans Head surf shop. And she went to my dad and said, hey, do you mind if I offer Jade a traineeship in small business to come run the surf shop instead of going to university? And I was like, I get to work in a surf shop, turn up to work wearing zinc cream and go surfing and like hang out with all the cool things and get paid for it. Seems a way better deal than going to university to do some shit that I don't want to do.
Yeah, and getting like life experience. Yeah.
Life experience. But like back in the days, like this is 97. And so having the reps used to still come to store back then. You didn't have to, like during my time there, we ended up changing. You had to come up to the, up to the Goldie and go to the showrooms and go through the range showings then. But when I first started, like, I remember having Danny Tacchini from Quicksilver come in and like show the range and like wheel it out of the back of the van. And I can't remember the guy from O&E, but he was the original owner of the distribution for O&E. And it was the relationship, like traineeship. I was just left in charge of doing all the buying, running the whole shop, like never, it was like, here's your budget, go nuts. Yeah. And it was the guys that built the relationships with me that I knew weren't going to try and oversell me like a product line, because they knew the size of, like, we're in Evans Head, like we're tiny, right? And we'd got stuck with a bunch of Mambo gear or something once before, because my boss had, you know, bought a range and they told the minimum orders, and it was just shit that was never going to sell in Evans. And it's like, this is never going away. And the guys that were like, actually, look, we can bend the rules a little bit. We can give you a cut and do a split pack or something. Like, you wanted to come back and use them again. And like, it became like their friends. So Danny would turn up and I'd make sure that I'd have his favorite coffee ready to go. I'd give him the window. It's like, okay, if you're going to merch, you can have the window. Yes. And help them out. And I think that I almost say that there's the dying art of the relationship, because if people are getting into these bigger businesses, it is the numbers. It's like the KPIs and hit the numbers and make the sales, and no, you've got to do these minimum orders, and you know, you're remunerated based on purely on those numbers and the performance, and it doesn't actually allow the person to humanize the deal And it's really interesting. One of my clients from Byron, we're just talking about now, we're going to take out individual incentive structure for the sales team because we've found that there's so many people involved with making the sale now. Like they've got their marketing team, they've got the customer service, they've got the retention, you've got the person that's helping someone to assist them, and then you've got your salesperson at the end. It's like, why is the salesperson getting all of the deal? And then you've got salespeople trying to get in early and take the leads, and like it's breeding this competitive, like must be the best nature. And we're like, actually, that's against the values that we have of collaboration. And I think it's, if you can. And
it's like a relation. I think like the idea of a relationship, if you look at that as a kind of a metaphor, that when you meet someone, you don't try to like dive into bed with them straight away.
Yeah.
Or you don't ask them to marry you on
espresso
the
martini
first date.
first.
It's about a gradual kind of long-term sort of thing. Like you might be a really amazing salesperson and be able to go in to an environment, and because you're so charismatic, sell them as much as you can. But if you haven't thought about what their needs are and what is best for them in the long term, they might not sell all of that stock, or that you might have given them the stock that you wanted to get rid of because, you wanted to get it off your plate. Yeah. But then a few months down the track, are they going to be happy with the service that you've given them, or are they going to just feel like you've manipulated them into something they don't want?
Yeah. It's thinking about the long term rather than that short term gain and sort of hit of achieving something. Having that understanding of the longer play. And I think this comes down to values as well, and like that value alignment and going, well, what are my core values? Like I actually, I want to sell stuff, but more I want to help people win, or what's that process? And I want to, if you don't mind if I squirrel away, and how you came into.
Make some tea here in the background.
You make some tea.
Yeah. It's boiling.
You ended up leaving Rip Curl and starting your own agency, and you're out on your own for about 20 years?
Yeah.
So talk us through like the step of, having the balls to go out on your own, why you did it, and what's some of the lessons that you learned from having your own business?
Well, I was very fortunate because I was already employed by Rip Curl, and they actually flipped everything over to agency. So they kind of actually cash flowed the first season for me. So in actual fact, if I sold $1 million worth of weddies, they forecasted that and slowly paid me. So I was able to cash flow. It was very fortunate. I mean, these days you got to lend money off mum and dad, or you got to go to the bank, or you got to show some sort of turnover or result. So the thing for me was that
still all your life possessions.
Yeah. Here's my didgeridoo, and so when you do, like for me, and it's not for everyone, but my ultimate thing in this world is, outside of a good relationship, is freedom, and so when I work for people, I find it very hard to sort of work within their control boundaries. So by going out and running my own agency, I controlled how I worked, when I wanted to work. I also had to hold the stress and the accountability on, financial situations. And I've always been lucky. I've had a great family who have always supported me in some tough times or whatever. But essentially, I started that with me on my own, and then I got a PA, and then I got about 5 sales staff. So I went from I was doing Rusty and Stussy at the time. So we're doing some pretty cool. And we started Arnett Eyewear, and then we got Aztec Rose, and in the end it just became Rusty.
Aztec Rose,
remember that?
Oh my God, that was my favourite brand in the world.
Yeah, it was a great. They were great crew,
I
great girls.
absolutely loved Aztec.
Amazing ladies. They were great, and so we.
And that's interesting because it was a male, most surfwear was directed towards males for quite some time.
Yeah.
And you're saying Aztec Rose.
It's so funny. I literally got goosebumps. I haven't heard that name in so long. Yeah. But my brand affinity to that is still so strong. Like I literally was like, oh, I love them. Yeah. I can imagine. I had this white bikini that I just absolutely adored. And pretty much any range that came out, I was like, I had to have it. And I don't know. I actually can't remember why that brand alliance came around, but
they were the first guys to get onto Jodie Mears. James Packer's ex-wife, and Jodie Mears was this But in her early days, so they made this cutout, like this, 5'5" cutout of Jodie
That's
Mears,
right.
pretty much in the nude, and so you could just stick
You
this
could stick the bikini
Aztec
on it.
Rose bikini
It
on
had
it and have it at the door.
It had this like
And
little.
Jodie was well built, wasn't she?
Yeah,
She's
it was like
incredible.
this little
Was
naked
that
Blessed-
for the,
nude.
blessed by nature.
for the
Let's just
guys
call
or
it-
the girls to put in
Let's
their
just call
bedroom?
it blessed by nature.
Yeah, it was. She
I
had these
think-
little nude
won't tell you how
G-string things on that you could dress her in. That's right.
So that was Aztec Rose.
That's a pretty interesting little.
Yeah.
Well,
marketing
like
ploy.
when you think about how do you get like you want to get eye space, like when we were talking about liquor before, and you know you're
Pure
an
Scott.
ambassador for Pure Scotch.
Yeah.
But when you're going into a bottle shop, you want eye level on the shelf. Like that's
Yeah.
the best place to have your range. Like you're in a surf shop. Like how do you get your bikini in front of the people? Like there's only so much window space. There's only one gondola end.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And then
right.
Jodie though, you can pick her up and move around everywhere.
Now all the old managers, you know, in those old shops, are like, yeah, we'll take
We'll
that
take one.
merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
actually, give us another one. You know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we'll have two
it was like the
Jodies.
most successful merchandise you could have ever
So
developed.
POS merchandising, obviously hugely important, like Jade was saying, in all kind of industries. So what were some tricks that you learned in the surf industry for having, say, your products you've worked with, like Rusty Aztec Rose, etc. You know, being,
Yeah. Well, I used to call it the 2 Ps, which is you worked on the people and you worked on your position. So basically, if you were sitting back in this little dark corner, then you ripped it out and without knowing. But if you worked on the people, that sold it. So and those they were called retail support kind of. So you'd go, hey mate, look, that jacket looks amazing on you. How about I get you one similar, half price? And you were seducing and you were doing all sorts of funny things like that. But in the end, you were caring for them and looking after them. And at the time, I was just doing Rip Curl wetsuits and accessories. So everyone in the surf shops were buffed out in Rip Curl wetties at a cheap deal, or they got one free if they were a big account. So yeah, a bit of manipulation and a bit of product placement or seeding. So they, and when we started, it was funny. I don't want to jump. That's probably going to jump too far there, but
That's right. We can always circle back.
Yeah,
we love these
well-
conversations that go everywhere.
yeah, but okay. So
breakfast.
it was funny because when we started Patagonia and I opened up the retail store, the first retail store was in Torquay, and it was really, really hard to get the product onto people, and the
Like
shop- the
physically
shop-
on their bodies.
Yeah, just to come in, try it on, get
Yep.
a feel for it, ask questions. Can we educate you about the organic cottons or this or that? And it ended up that we ended up having this massive warehouse sale, which was like 65% off. And so I advertised it in the local paper, and then the whole town, Torquay, came to this little warehouse.
Tight-ass Torquay.
Tight-ass Torquay, right? Tight-ass.
Well, there's a sale. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Bloody hell. And, everyone was, in there, and they bought this stuff really cheap. And so they were walking around, and by that purchase and by that experience of wearing Patagonia, which makes just the most beautiful quality product, and that's not a sales pitch, but they are. Their clothing is, I think, their best number one thing. I think their environmental aspects are number two, but I think their products are so good. They got it, they wore it, they went, oh my God, how good's this? And then next season, all those people, they sort of transmutated back into the store and saying, hey, I got this really cheap jacket, got any other cheap
Yeah,
ones?
what else
But
you got?
And we were able to sell them something
I think
else.
the mental block that I've always had with Patagonia before I became obsessed with it is that it was associated with mountain climbing and outdoors and,
Yeah.
and stuff that I didn't do.
Yeah.
So how do you change people? Whoops, there goes the white dress. Look at that. She got excited
Wow.
there. She was like, I like mountain
I
climbing.
like-
Yeah, yeah.
I like the outdoors.
This is why I usually have a lid on my coffee cup. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
well, we're on
sorry.
fire
Oh,
today.
I do have lids for those, but I wasn't sure.
What? Well, look, you
yeah, look,
stitched. You
there
give
it
me
is.
dead set
Okay,
stitch
this
up.
is called a mag slider, so it locks off.
I love the.
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
No, Yeti will be
How
loving
much-
this.
I'll be
They'll be like, yeah, she should be using the
But
Yeti lid.
that's a really good question because I got told by Tim Pallin, Paddy Pallin's the biggest, chain in Australia for, independent chain, said to me, looked at me and just said, hey mate, you're mad. What are you doing? Doing a hybrid. We were rolling out a sort of surf aspect to Patagonia as well as, we were trying to sell these mountain climbing jackets and waterproofs and alpining stuff. And he goes, mate, you're mad. What are you doing? And I said, no, we're going to go for this hybrid surf shop. We're going to do this way. And it succeeded in the end, but he was sort of right that it was hard to penetrate a market that didn't know us. And when we first opened the first store, which was a hybrid store, we had surfboards and wetsuits and all the board shorts. And people were kind of looking at us like, hey, why are you pretending to be a surf brand? Why are you being something you're not? And so I stuck to the guns that all of our climbers surfed in summer and in winter, because they climbed in summer. They climbed when the snow was melting and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting that, sometimes you can go up against a kind of like a tidal push against you when you can sort of say, well, what's right about this wrong? Why am I still penetrating this tidal push against me? Why don't I just step off the bank and go that way? Which we all stuck to the guns and kept marketing ourselves as surfers. And now Patagonia in Australia is very much seen as a hybrid brand and very much a surf eco-adventurer. There's this big movement that there's so many kids, sort of spiraling around the brand because they're all in vans and they're all going surfing and they're all saving the environment, and, fighting for the bite and, stopping PEP 11. And so there's this incredible new movement, kind of like the eco-adventurer that's very, very firm with Patagonia.
I'm sure, Jade, you work with a lot of different clients who one of their probably main struggles is to how to align themselves with other target markets. It must be a difficult thing for people to do.
Yeah, it's super difficult. And I think it's about, if you've got a really clear... Amazing. You must have heard my thoughts.
I couldn't work out.
I was like, maybe we...
I was like walking around.
We can get this off. The adventurer.
Turn the kid off.
Yeah, I love it. So what I think is the common thread there, though, it's finding the common thread. It's finding the way to make it make sense. Because make it appeal. Or if you're just trying to appease one avatar, one type of client, and you're going in a completely the opposite direction, and there's no one can draw a line between the connection. It kind of feels like you're just forcing something, or you're just trying to, grope for money. Whereas I've always seen Patagonia as an adventure brand.
Yeah.
And for me, mountain climbing, surfing, snowboarding, anything that there's still the common thread is the type of person, and it's still that adventure sport, and it's still that connection to nature. So for me, there's not a big jump between the two. So although you're trying to penetrate a new market, and surfers we know are quite protective over what we are and what we aren't, I think that's if other businesses are looking at it, why, you've got to draw the line. You've got to help people put the dots together on why they match. Can you just talk to, you were talking about how you ended up joining Patagonia, and they were coming out and sort of talking to Wayne originally, but you said you already had an interest in them, and why had you kind of gone, there's someone I want to work with?
Well, it was funny because we were fighting a logging coop when I built this little shack in the bush, and I had this little getaway, which ended up being most of the time, I was living there, and but right next to us, they had this 5,000 acre clear fell or clear cut, so they'd just go in and just mow the whole thing. So we sort of started fighting that, and then it was just that it was Dave Parmenter, a surfer shaper, came down and hung out with Wayne, and Wayne had just been approached by them, and he just looked at me, and Wayne looked at me and said, why don't you just email this guy that came to us? And so I emailed him and said, look, I really want to change. I want to get out of this whole surf industry thing. The surf industry was diluting, and sales were really difficult, and people were really stressed and really hard to kind of, find some sort of harmony, peacefulness, and very demanding. But ended up, he came back and said, look, we're going to come out. We're going to meet there's another two groups that we're going to talk to. And so they came out, met me and another guy who was sort of helping me at the time, and said, yep, you're it. About 6 months later, they're very slow in their decision making. And so we flew to Ventura, Patagonia, and met Yvon Chenard and his wife Melinda and their son Fletcher and daughter, and just an amazing family. I just fell in love with the whole family, the whole business. It's a lot of people say it's a bit like a cult. You walk through it, you hear a pin drop. Everyone's just in this zen, on their computers designing or.
Is it true that if the surf's up, everyone's allowed to go surfing?
I was going to say that before because it was kind of revolutionary because when I first started at Rip Curl in 1982, there was this, drop tools when it's 8 foot and all that kind of stuff, which is, it had to be kind of pretty perfect to go surfing.
What about for someone like me that like 4
Yeah,
foot's just like,
exactly.
can I go at 4 foot? You can go at 8 foot. If it's like little 4 foot barrels that miniature me can tuck into.
But I think he was.
You got to go out the 8 foot ones.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I wouldn't go, but I'm like, I'll paddle out in the lineup and sit there.
Yeah. But he was revolutionary in that he wrote, the name of his book was Let My People Go Surfing. And it was basically, and it was like this honouring of your position as an employee and giving that person complete trust, and that he wasn't going to do any, no harm to anyone around him in his sort of business little group or, but also he would be responsible in that he would come back and finish his work on time. So there was this, they call it flexi time. And so he wrote his book about it, that how important it was to find that balance and to have everyone enjoying the business like he was.
Yeah.
And so if you have, the boss kind of run around getting all the profit and, and going surfing and come back with, the ski goggle kind of, sunbaked kind of, I was just up at Jackson Hole, And, obviously he deserves that, but essentially all the workers, and he just flatlined the wages. And then there was this group incentive. So he'd make these big announcements, as well as giving 1% to the planet. He started with Steve Kellogg. He started that 1% for the planet, where they started giving away, which was really, again, quite revolutionary to start a .org foundation that grabs the money and then puts it into grassroots.
So if you find staff that believe in the product and believe in what the product stands for, you don't need to micromanage. You don't need to. No. You can trust them to.
Yeah, and you hold staff for a long time because you're holding their heart, you're holding their passions, and so you've got this. There's people there. There's a guy called Vincent Stanley, and he wrote a book with Yvonne called Responsible Business. It's a very good read, and it's all the things they've learnt about, how to be responsible in business. But Vincent Stanley's actually, I think he's Yvonne's cousin, but he was there, and he got up on stage and said, "Well, it's my 45th year in the company," and I was like, 45 years. Wow. Incredible. And it might have been, that he went surfing a lot, and maybe it was, it was because he just loved what he did. And Patagonia is like that. They build this incredible culture, and they got free organic food at lunchtime. They got a creche. They just built things in there that, it's like the fair trade movement when they started that 10 or so years ago, that they were building things around the factories in China and building things around India, and all that Nike kind of child labour stuff that came out that they were completely annihilated for in the media, and stuff that just Yvonne was very aware of, and that we just definitely have to look after our people. We're not robots. We're children. We want to have fun. We want to enjoy our life.
How do you get people to put their hand in their pockets, and pay that bit extra for a piece of for an item of clothing, because it does come from a sustainable and an ethical background? How do you because Thailand's Torquay we're talking about before.
Yeah.
They wanted to buy it because it was 65% off. But how do you get people to go the other way?
Well, I think Patagonia got really good at their labelling, and they ended up putting almost little books on there, so the people that had the time could see that they were paying a little bit extra for the fair trade add-on, which Patagonia would pay an extra 25%. That was a better factory and that had better ethics and better people management. And then they looked at it and went, "Oh wow, here's the here's a statement. It says, oh, don't buy this jacket unless you need it," and other really kind of controversial,
sort of almost polarizing.
Yeah, and this is organic cotton. This is more toxic than coal, and that this is one thing that we attacked back in the early 90s, and you should not add to because all the chemical stuff and the stuff that's coming out now about Roundup. glycosamine, and they did something like Harvard did a test on 80 beers and 60 of them had Roundup in it. 60 of them, and so the amount of chemicals that have been made by these what's their name? Anyway, Bauer and Monsanto. So, and all this chemical, gene modifying and all that sort of stuff, it's all going to come out. But let's make choices. Let's make meaningful choices. That this brand, or there's a lot of good brands out there now doing what the Patagonia crew did, is you step into it and go, I'm making that choice because I'm not supporting that. Right down over there at the end of the supply chain, I'm not supporting you, Monsanto, or I'm not supporting you, sweatshop crazy Indian mafia guy with 300 kids sewing, and I'm not supporting you. I'm supporting my choice is supporting wallet, this right here, and that's how you open your wallet.
And I'm wondering, Jade, when you're working with business, with clients, do you make a concerted effort to try to convince them to be more ethical in their business practices?
100%. And I say that I firstly have a no dickhead policy within the business. If
you're going to take people on,
and the first sign of you being a dickhead, you're gone. So we have said goodbye to people before. But I want to work with humanity and Planet Plus businesses. So if someone's not it kind of sounds bad, probably for other business coaches, it's kind of like they go in and they work with what they want to do. I'm like, sometimes it's not my way or the highway, but if you choose to work with me, especially with building teams, it's about employee happiness first. Like, I'm on a mission to enable 6,000 people to be happier at work by May 2024, and that starts with the founders of the business. But I believe that it's our job as business owners to be the ripple effect of lowering stress, anxiety, and depression through the place that they spend the most time at. So it's like, okay, if you're not willing to put your people first and to look at this shit, then you're not my people. But then I come in and I look at them in terms of we've taken a step away from values and gone more to virtues, because I believe you can't force I believe a value is your own personal belief, and you can't force your beliefs upon somebody else. But you can have a set of company virtues that you all assign, like you all enroll in, and say, I sign up to this. And I'm always pushing my clients to pick a virtue that's going to be planet and humanity plus. So what can they do to lower the impact on the environment? Where can they make better choices? Like, one of my key clients down in Newcastle, they have students come into the workshop. So they teach engineering, and those of you that watch the show a lot will know Kyle. We do Barrels, Business and Beers every second Friday. But we now, whenever the students come in, it's like, okay, we've got a bunch of coffee cups. So when the coffee cart comes, grab your cup. You can label it with a whiteboard marker and take it out to Steve, and Steve will make your coffee in your coffee cup rather than taking actual getting takeaway cups from the coffee cart. When somebody new starts, they get given a keep cup to start off with, and it's like, okay, cool. These little
making
initiatives,
them feel valued, making people feel important and part of the organisation straight away.
And we introduced a value for them called Planet Plus, and everyone on the team was like, this is going to be my hardest one because I just don't know enough. But every week we're like, okay, in the team meeting, how can you be more Planet Plus? Or the team in the huddle we go, okay, what value do you want to be, or virtue do you want to be recognized for next week? You want to pat on the back for? And someone will go, I want to be Planet Plus. So what I'm going to do is go and have a look at the workshop and see what we could change out. And so everyone's now like taking a step up and going, where can they slowly change the business to make less impact? And like, one of the guys had to travel from Newcastle to South Australia, and he sent me a video. He's like, so I packed the water cooler, I filled up my water cooler, it's in the trailer, and I've got my coffee cups, and he pulled over on the side of the road and he had his burner, he was making his own coffee. And so instead of where he said he used to stop at every servo and buy a takeaway cup and he'd buy a bottle of water, plastic water, he's now stocked the trailer with all of the things, and he's sharing that message. With
social media and stuff, we can really share like everything about our lives and within our sort of team at work and stuff. One point that I wanted to touch upon with what you're saying is it's probably very easy for people to come up with all these kind of buzzwords and them not actually sort of implement them and to be practical, and for people just to kind of wash over people's heads. So I think it's pretty important to actually practice what you preach, not just sort of send out a memo. We're going to be Planet Plus this week. Wear your Hawaiian shirt on Friday. Things like that.
Gotta live it.
Because people aren't stupid. People aren't naive. Mostly, they know when something's just a buzzword and it's just like something's happened in a meeting where they've decided they're going to do this and tell everyone to do it. So how do you make people believe in the message rather than just forcing it down?
Well, I reckon you're going to be able to touch on this with Yvonne as well. Am I saying his name right?
Yep.
It's what you do is who you are, and if you want that to come through your business and build a culture, you have to live it and breathe it. It can't be words on a wall for a set of values. Like my team know, like I will not have a coffee if I don't have a keep cup. Like I just won't have one. Like I'll go without. It's just too bad, my bad luck. If I'm going to get coffee for the guys when I go to site, I keep, like I've got 5 different keep cups in the car, juice cups and things for those that don't have coffee. And like it's my line in the sand, and you've got to live it and you've got to breathe it. Like my old place on the Gold Coast is where I used to have all my workshops. Everyone knew that McDonald's you're not allowed in my house. If you've got a fast food chain thing, you don't even come. Just don't come.
How strict were you, Glenn, with the people you worked with and their sort of ethics and value? Like, did you have a bit of wiggle room? Did you sort of try to mold people into the way that you want them to be?
Yeah, I think I hoped I had good influence on them, and I read Yvonne's book, and so I kind of got it in my head. But I spent a lot of time in Ventura and just saw the way they kind of ran their business and how they looked after their employees. But it's Yvonne says this great line that evolution starts at the bottom, or revolution, sorry, and that just you yourself can influence, say, just 10 people. So whatever was your individual choice to grab a keep cup, eventually, by the time you've hit all these people and they've hit everyone, it becomes the collective field. So now we're recycling. When I was a kid, the ripple effect. So the ripple effect in the 80s was that, mate, just throw your rubbish out the window. 70s when I was a kid, mum and dad, so now we're very cautious of waste management and all sorts of things. But, and I had Yvonne come over and launch Australia, and he stayed with us, and I was driving along and I took him into a surf shop and I said, oh, how's this, marketing bullshit, Billabong and doing these recycled plastic bottle board shots, this is total rip off of us, Yvonne. And he looked at me, he goes, no, like it's awesome. And I was like, oh, like I'm saying the wrong thing to the Messiah. My distribution's over, And he goes, it doesn't matter when companies get on or people get on. It's just as long as they get on. And so he was stoked that and I think we all got to start at buying biodegradable washing powder and and doing all sorts of just being conscious of our footprint going into it. But Yvonne came back to me and said, I'll tell you what happened when I went to Walmart, and Walmart in America is a $400 billion company. And I went in and I sat down with the CEO and I looked at him and I went, you're supporting cotton, and it's the most toxic thing on the planet. And I educated him. I sat in front of him and educated him to the point where he was just like going, whoa, 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 whoa. And so Walmart within 2 years turned around $400 billion worth of cotton, cheap, Kmart type stuff. Everything in Walmart was organic cotton. And so it was, Yvonne said, that was one of my greatest achievements on a very small level.
Balls to
one person to walk in.
Like that, hey?
And so you just can't underestimate, what one person with one keep cup can end up doing with his time.
And also not assume how they're going to respond to what you say. Like he might have assumed before he went in there, this guy was going to tell him to F off.
Yeah.
But he still had the gall to go in there and say his piece.
I think it's the line in the sand. It's like, what do you stand for and what do you stand against? What are you willing to polarize for? What are you willing to draw the line in the sand and to just be vocal about? Because not everyone's going to hear you, but if it's the 10 people around you, and you never know where those 10 are going to go and how that can affect. And I was kind of reminded when you were saying before about the branding, it's like this amazing guy, Paul Dunn. He's done a lot of work with Simon Sinek, and he's got B1G1, so buy one, give one. He's got a saying that says people don't buy what you do; they buy what you believe in.
Yeah, it's very true.
And so I think the Patagonia brand, and the branding, it's like if you know your avatar and you can get those values, it's they buy what you believe in. They'll pay the extra dollars to do that. And it's when you make those, they read that card and they're like, holy shit, I didn't know that about cotton. And then they go home and they tell their kid and they're like, wow, no, we're not going to buy that because, and they start the education process. The problem is most of us, we're unaware. If I think back to 10 years ago, I was so unaware about my consumer purchases. Like I was playing footy and I'd buy a pair of boots and they're made out of plastic and, they get a little bit of a whatever and toss them, get another pair of boots, and you just didn't think about the consumer. But right now it's like I ordered during COVID, I ordered a rip curl wetsuit that ended up being one size too big, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I still wear it, and my boyfriend's like, get another suit. And I'm like, I'm not getting another suit until I want to buy a secondhand suit.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to go through that consumer process, and then I'll donate my suit to someone else that needs it. And he's like, well, are you taking action on getting this suit or what?
Yeah. No, we put together early days the Buy Better program, which was just buy better quality or be smarter in your purchases. And don't, we were talking before that, there's all sorts of, as a company, you make better product, and I because I do work for Yeti, and the phenomenal growth of this brand is like the surf industry in the 80s, is that it's one of the most quality, like they've got shots of polar bears, trying to rip these Yetis apart, and they can't, because they're so tough and I'm not obviously doing a plug here. Sorry, listeners, you're going to have to bear with me. But
I must say, besides the lid, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So it's the number one thing in selling Patagonia and Yeti and, and all those sorts of things is that if you do buy better, and there's a great line that says a poor man shouldn't buy cheap.
Yeah.
So if you can save up and buy a much better quality iPad, iPhone, cup, whatever, you'll keep that thing for 20 years and that's what Patagonia did. They revolutionized and Yeti the quality aspect. And then what they did is they revolutionized the lifetime warranty. They had this ironclad guarantee, which was this big stamp in the shop, and it was basically if we're standing by our product, and if it doesn't work, you can come back in and give it back to us, and we'll give you another one, or we'll give you your money back. And when I first heard that, and we first did the shop at Torquay, we had these little old grandmas and grandpas shuffling in. And in the 80s, or in the 70s, we went surfing, we went skiing in Mont Blanc, and this is the jacket, and all the bloody waterproofing's come off. And I'm just like looking at it going, well, that's a 18-year-old jacket. I don't know if this lifetime warranty kind of just, well, it says it on the wall. There's a bloody stamp over there that says ironclad guarantee. And so we're honouring some of these incredible old products that just had broken down over time, which, and so actually, there's a Patagonia went back to this whole thing and remeasured it and said it's a lifetime satisfaction guarantee. So if you're satisfied and you got 10 years of great use out of it and you're satisfied with it, but if you're not satisfied, we'll still talk to you about it. But from our point of view, probably 15 or 20 years of jacket life is, so they had to shuffle that around because they were getting
and it's sort of giving a brand a personality too, isn't it? It's making the brand into something you can relate to, and you want to be friends with Patagonia. You want to hang out.
And then my relationship with Aztec grows. Oh, Aztec.
I know. Yeah.
My old friends. Where did you go? Why did you leave me?
Walking down Evans Head in your new swimsuit.
In my new swimsuit.
Kate probably still got the Jody Mears cut out.
He's had it laminated.
I think so. Yeah.
He's like, I don't do plastic, but when I do, I coat Jody Mears in it. Is that her over there?
Not all that's been coated.
If you want to come to my pool room, the wallpaper is. Jody was good.
While we're just sort of talking about Case the person, we might just sort of circle back a little bit. So, you've had a lot of successes in the business world, but then you've also had some failures. You had a falling out with Patagonia. You had a bankruptcy situation. How do you tell us a little bit about that and bouncing back from that kind of disappointment?
Yeah, I think initially when I went through all the hard stuff with Patagonia, it was that, they weren't sort of performing that well. My family didn't want to back a product that was, really finding it hard to penetrate into. I probably made, a few bad moves, and I was a bit of a greenhorn. I was more of a salesman than a manager. So, and I'm more of a creative really. And so, we ended up talking to them, and we couldn't kind of work out, the best way forward. So they ended up paying us for the work that we did, and gave us our most of our cash back. And then I went through a pretty ugly separation, and I worked for Patagonia as brand manager, and I just went through a really rough period that just whatever I touched just went bad. And so I went through the law courts for 4 years, went bankrupt, and then basically had a sort of a chat to our global manager, and he said, well, why don't you go to Byron Bay and do a shop up there for us and get out of this office type thing, and so that was great for me, because I was able to, even though start back at zero. I had a 1-year-old daughter, a new partner of 3 years, and so we came up here and rebooted our lives. I still felt there was a lot of loss, and it's hard to get over that. There's quite a lot of depression in losing the dream, the fantasy. You have this desire to, be someone, or to, be this kind of, eco hero, with this cape flying around Torquay. So I kind of had to, become
quite humbling.
Yeah, very humbling. And I had to become, Ram Dass has this great line, I think I wrote it, that we're all becoming nothing. We're all becoming nobody, but in saying that, we become this great energetic soul so if we put our imaginative fantasy life and who we think we should be, some amazing businessman running around saving the planet, that's all just a mystery, because when we die, we don't take that with us, even though it's nice to do it while we're here. And so I had to get really into this really base core kind of survival instincts of, what do I really want? How do I really want to go? So I just ended up getting out of the Byron Bay store and just redeveloped myself as me, as the brand. I'm the soul. People want to hear me. People want to hear my experiences. The dark side of the moon, and the certain parts of my life. I've got a lot to offer, and so I've had great brands like Yeti and Pure Scott and these other brands come to me and go, hey, can you help us start up? Can you give us some connections with people? And it's like you meet someone in the street and he's a lovely kid, and you immediately want to help them, and that's energetic. So if you actually find someone that, you have this immediate relationship with, you could work with them, or you could, and so I have that. I feel like I have that with these brands and what I offer them, and so I meet really good people that, so I got like Dave Rastovich connected with Pure Scott. I got Heath Josky connected with Yeti. We've got Mick Fanning on now with Yeti, and all these old connections over the years that through a little bit of a phone call and a bit of a catch up, we're able to, kind of build their influences, help their marketing in Australia look an authentic Aussie brand, which everyone wants to look like they're a part of this environment, and the people do that. People give you that cottage home feel,
Yeah.
So but in the end, I've rebuilt myself to I'm a single father, and
Does Willow surf?
Willow surfed heaps, and then she just shut it down and almost broke my heart. And I was like, oh God, please, and but she's talking about going back into it and surfing again. She hasn't surfed for a year now, but she started about COVID, so I thought it was this kind of surf pandemic, where she started and learned. She did it for about 6 months and couldn't get off it, and learned to ride, paddled onto them and rode, and she's really quite sporty and talented, and then she just shut it down. But anyway, we'll revisit that maybe when she's Steffi Gilmore and 2029. But
so this kind of spiritual case that is the current case. Current case.
You're calling me a split personality.
It seems.
idea.
It seems bringing this idea of getting out of the books, getting out of the MBA and the textbook side of things, and being on an energetic level. How do you read that, Jade? Do you think it's something that can work for other people in business to tap more into a spiritual kind of path and to bring that energetic thing into their practices?
100%. It's probably similar to my own story. So I had the listeners that have been on before will understand this story. I drove a glitter orange Lotus Elise. I wore a 3-piece pinstripe suit. I had the big office on Pitt Street in the city of Sydney, and all of the trimmings, the house that looked at the Harbour Bridge, and it was like that go, go, go. And I call it my spiritual awakening. I had conversations with God that we talked about, and that just really changed my life. And I was on a trajectory where I could have gone into, the multi-office, I had the investors, and it could like go down that path. And one day I woke up and realized that I don't know if this is all it's meant to be, and realized I hadn't been surfing properly. Like I'd surfed 10 times in 17 years. And so there's hope for Willow. She can come back.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, there's got to be more to life than just grinding away under fluorescent lights and paying off the debt that you're racking up and buying all the shiny
worshipping
shit.
money, and you decided to worship yourself rather than money.
Even though I was making the money and I had like obviously some pretty cool shit, like I bought the Lotus because I didn't have a car as a kid. Like we used to have to hitch to hospital, and we'd hitch to Ballina to go to the dentist. And so for me, like just the experience of driving a car, and like I didn't feel like I was overly consumeristic, but when I looked at it, it was kind of like, do I need $5,000 watches? Probably no. But I just started questioning, like, why are we here, and came to the realization that we're souls here having a human experience. And do I only want to experience building a business, or like I was playing football then as well, or playing football? Like, what is the experience that I really want to have, and how do I figure out what this soul is like? Because I feel like there's just all this noise and all the bombardment of what you should, like you talked about. So
you got to make compromises.
You got to make compromises. Like everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else, and you've got to kind of weigh up. And this goes back to those values and virtues. It's like, what are you willing to say no to say yes to the right things, or what's aligned to you, and how do you tap in to that soul? And for me, again, I go back to the clients that I work with. I want those people, and I've really started to attract clientele that have started their spiritual awakening. They're starting to tap into their soul, and like some of the guys are doing, like they've gone from say $1 million last year, and they're on track to do 10 million in the next 18 months. Like it's not like they're sitting around, just making green teas and banging on the drum. Like there's serious businesses, but there's that soul element. Like they journal in the morning, they make sure they meditate, or when they realize they're off kilter, it's like, fuck, I've got to get in the water, or I've got to go for a run, or I've got to, and there's boundaries on, I work hard, but this time of day, I take my kid to school and I kiss them goodbye. And at this time of day, I pick them up, and nothing else really gets in the way of that.
Well, I suppose stress is probably one of the main things that holds people back in their life and in business in general. And these are ways that you're talking about to deal with stress and to improve your mental health. And that's going to, in turn, of course, improve productivity in all aspects of your life. So it's like kind of taking a step backwards to go forwards, isn't it?
Yeah, so you've got to slow down to speed up.
That's what it seems like. And I'm sure you've experienced that too, Casey. You're living out here behind Lennox in nature.
Yes.
But you don't, like, at what point, how do you know how far to go back till you're like living in a tent? You know what I mean?
That's right. Finding
or a van.
But it's a fancy van.
I sold the Lotus to build that van.
It's a beautiful.
The van's worth as much as the Lotus with all the crap in it.
Yeah. It's an interesting point because when I grew up, I was dyslexic, undiagnosed, but essentially I had no education skills at all. Like I failed everything. They all wanted to keep me down. There was all, there's all support systems in place now for that kind of thing. But There's a thing once you get outside the fear coma, is there's this thing called destiny, and there's this big question whether it's a co-creation or it's you're creating it, and I think or it's the creator that's pulling you along, and so there's a part of me that I find that now it's a co-creation. It's me meeting the experiences that are coming at me, and so when I was and all the Eastern cultures and the the Mayan people and the Amazon and the Sumatran people, they all have men's initiation or initiation periods where Australian Aboriginals they take the kids off for this awakening, and sometimes they use different types of bark that gives them a sort of a psychoactive sort of experience, and shamans do all sorts of things. So this sort of happened to me when in the 80s, and it kind of formed all of my life, and it changed me because I saw my mind, I saw all my fears, and I realised that I could sort of do anything if I really chose to, and I really planned it properly, and
Just from facing your fear at Waimea, like getting a beat down.
It helped all those things like we were talking about earlier. That once I had a 20-foot wave roll on top of me, and I went, well, okay, I'm a spiritual being. I'm in this body. I'm going to have this incredible, expansion of my lungs. I'm going to be crying under there and praying to God or whatever. But you have this knowing that you're going to survive, and we had some incredible experiences as well as these, certain things that really helped shape me as a human for life. But it once you crack open that fear coma, in business or wherever you go, as long as you have the right the right tools and the right things keep coming at you, you can virtually do anything. I mean, why did Elon Musk? Why is Elon and what's Branson doing? What are all these? What were they as kids? Okay, they might have been born into money. They might have had all this fortunate stuff happen to them. But I was born very poor in the western suburbs, and here I am running around doing this incredible blueprint, global phenomenal brand called Patagonia, and I'm like sitting there one day going, how the hell did I pull this off? And it was because I got the fear out of the way. I got a lot of clearing in my early 20s, where in the end I really worked with my mind, and all the mental health stuff that's going on now is that all the pressures and all these things that are coming at these young men is because they think they're the mind. You're not the mind. You're not the body. This is a massive recording. And so when you get into the soul space, you're outside of the mind, and you're creating a third witness going, yeah, my mind's saying that. The head committee up here is saying this, but I'm going this way because I feel as if, and I have the awareness that this is the right way, and it's courage, and it's got to be, you got to courageously kind of initiate yourself in the world in the most, dynamic way.
Can I kind of touch from what you're saying there on the whole idea of sort of manifestation and kind of like vision boards and stuff? Like,
yeah.
I mean, as a guy, I find vision boards kind of a little bit effeminate and a little bit sort of Oprah Winfrey, that kind of thing. But surely there is some validity in everybody taking that type of approach to what they want.
I can masculinize your vision board.
Can you give me a masculine vision board?
Yeah, I certainly can. I can give it to you right after this. So I created this Trello board, which is a project management software, and it's for the Blissipline blueprint. Have you heard of the term Blissipline?
No.
So Blissipline was a term coined by Reverend Michael Beckwith, and it means like having the discipline to be able to live your bliss.
That's amazing. I love that.
Like we know that the key to freedom is discipline. And so if you can have discipline to do the things to live your bliss, like not get caught up in the shoulds and to actually live life, because if you're a workaholic, you've actually got to have the discipline to say, no, I'm not going to have to go do this. And so I was like, how can I systemize this for people that don't want the woo-woo fucking manifestation vision board? And so it's a project management software tool with different cards underneath it where you can put in images of the things that you're working towards and break down like, okay, what are your 1 to 3? Yep, digital vision board. Like what are your 1 to 3 year goals? What are your bigger picture? And then an actual milestones, like weekly milestones of how you can actually achieve
Picture of
those
Jodie
things.
Mears.
Jodie Mears can be right there, 100%.
Yeah.
You can have a picture of Jodie right in that little
The action
card.
board.
Yep.
Although
then you can
these
talk
days
through-
she's probably getting on a bit.
Look, I still reckon she
She's
goes
still
all right.
Very,
Yeah.
very beautiful. Yeah, she's still very beautiful. Hi,
So
Jodie.
why? So can I ask why having the actual image? How does that? Why is that better than just the idea of something?
I'm going to bring it back to the Lotus. So when I first started in recruitment, I had to make a whole 100 cold calls a day, and you'd make 100 cold calls and you'd be told to fuck off 99 times.
Yeah.
And this is back in the days where I shared a shared office with Google. So you didn't really Google things. You literally you had to look up the yellow pages and make the numbers and call.
Yeah.
And that should wear you down. And so I used to go past on the train, past Lotus on the way home every day. And I'm like, one day I'm buying one of those fucking cars.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy one. And so I cut a picture and I cut it out and I put it next to the phone. Every time I was told to fuck off, I'd be like, Lotus. Whatever.
like
Next. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
just that little reminder. And it took me 5 years to buy it. I ended up buying a couple of other cars in between because I had a whole self-worth. I should have just bought the Lotus. Like I bought a Monaro, did a whole bunch of coin on it.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't feel like I actually deserved
Yeah.
the Lotus. But it was that visual reminder of pulling me forward and bringing it into reality. Like it's kind of like I could touch it. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the vision boards work is it's that especially if you're a visual learner or like you need to see pictures to make it your reality.
Jodie.
Like Jodie. Yeah, bring that in. It makes the connection in your brain for you because what you believe you can achieve. So if you're seeing it regularly and you do actually believe it, then you can call it forth.
So can I just ask, in your opinion, is this the subconscious or is this something energetic and spiritual, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both, but it's, Henry Ford's quote, like whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And so there's no point putting something on a vision board if subconsciously you think you're never going to be able to attain because you're never going to attain it.
Yeah.
Like when you put that thing on the board, you've got to have that belief that if you take the action, like you can't just sit there and go, come on, universe. Like the chances of that happening. I believe that manifestation, I think I mentioned to you that I manifested you into my.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
That was
a bit.
tingles up the back.
Yeah. I did the same thing yesterday, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I don't believe you can just sit there and fucking pray to the universe and it's going to drop in your lap.
Yeah.
You've got to take the action, but it's by having
You
that
gotta create
clarity.
space, right?
You've got to create the
Create
space. You've got to make the commitment, and you've got to have the belief. So when I met you, you came and knocked on the van when I was doing a coaching call. But I had literally been driving home from Byron that night.
Timing.
And I was like, I really want to I love doing like more conversational style podcasts. And it's great when I interview. I really feel like I need some more surfing, bigger picture surfing people in because I've been doing a lot of just business or business owners that surf, but they're not in the surfing business. And I've got to think about that. I wonder who I could reach out to collaborate with. And like literally driving from Byron to Lennox, that's what my thought was. And no shit, the next day Danny banged on my van and he's like, hey, my name's Danny. I have like this radio show called The Sandpit and I've been looking at your podcast and I was thinking we could collaborate. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know, I've never listened to the radio. I hadn't looked him up. I just went, Soul said, you're like, you are here for a reason.
Stuck him in your manifesting web.
Yeah.
And he got drawn
and
in.
he just popped in. And then on Monday or Tuesday, I was running a team meeting with my team and I'm like, we're looking at the marketing strategy and I'm like, okay, we just know if I get on and talk and I actually get to interact with people, like the fucking social media posting and like putting ads on Facebook just energetically doesn't work for me.
No.
But like, and I have this, I don't like it. I said, let's just go the strategy of let's just get me doing more podcasts, speaking on more things and plugging into other people's communities where I can serve and I'll just show up and serve and I believe that'll happen.
Yeah.
And my guy that handles my socials and everything sent me a message in the morning. He's just like #manifest. And he just sent these screenshots of like people I've never connected with on LinkedIn sending connection requests. And he's written back, why did you want to connect? And they're like, oh, we've seen you. We love your content. We think you could you come and speak on my podcast? Could you present at my summit? then another coach is like, hey, I'm doing a live event in Byron. Could you come and speak at it for me? I'm like, whoa.
I'm sure old mate at Yeti is probably going to be watching this going,
Yeah.
I need Jade on our team.
Yeah. If you want me to come, I can come around some.
I'd like to add to that there's this factor that you said about manifesting is that I got this line which is nature's boss, and so we call it God or we call it creator or whatever, but but I do believe that we can manifest and we can create, but nature also has to meet you somewhere in the middle. So it's a co-creation. So, and if you know the greatest problem with men's mental health or mental health, women's mental health, is that if we do dive into the spaciousness of the mind, then we just become depressed, or we're open to taking on information that. So, like you said before, is that action that if we start just doing something, that's the healing mechanism of depression, is that you have acted and you've stepped out of your mind. And so what I'm saying before about this men's, initiation stuff that all these indigenous tribes do is that they get them into action, but they get them to see why their mind is working for them or against them. And so by having nature as the boss over there, and you step into action and you start to get your business going, if you don't get up every morning with love and energy and the gas tank full to go ahead and act, then you're not getting your balance with nature, and then you're out of balance with your business, and you're not giving your business the juice that it needs to move forward. So this whole nature is boss thing is that then she puts on a show, she puts on the movie and says, well, today this isn't working and this right is a wrong. So you got to look that way. And so you are interacting with the reality of this universe, or this, nature is boss thing, as well as you as a soul, as a nature, creating this co-connection. And that's how you work your business life. And this is not going to go straight to an MBA, kind of boardroom table going, this is how we're going to, this is a type of balancing act you've got to have in your company where you have both types of conscious beings. You can have your robot-y, very high-end intellectual academics, and then you're going to have these creative guys, and they're both going to be judging the shit out of each other, and both kind of going to be hating each other because they're very different beings. But that's how I've seen all great companies work. Brian Singer and Claude Warbrick, Doug Warbrick, super creative, super spiritual, and then you got this kind of driven businessman, Alan Green, John Law from Quicksilver, They're both one very considered, very sensitive, making all the, and so this combination is to me is where I've seen all the great companies succeed, is because they've had the creativity
the yin and yang.
and all the yin and the yang. It's the yin and the yang, and the feminine and masculine, and but typically what I've seen a lot is that the masculine are jumping in and trying to control one part of the business, where as a leader and as a manager, and what I did is I protected both aspects because they're both as important as each other. You crazy animal sales guy over there, you go get them and kill them and rip their heads off and whatever, which is contrary to what I said before, but also the marketing, juicy, sensitive, sincere kind of, person over here. Protect them. Protect both aspects and both channels. Like the male and the female, they create a being. It's called a business, and so that in the end gets.
And I love it how as soon as you said nature's boss, it started raining a little bit.
Yeah,
it did.
Does nature want us out of her
Finish.
bosom? And maybe nature decided to call the podcast.
Yeah. It's all done.
All done. We'll need to get him back though, because I need to hear the story of riding the Zodiac flipping over, getting punished.
Yeah.
So should we?
I could do it real quick if you wanted the.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay.
End us on
so
it.
Perfect.
So basically, Wayne and I got a couple of tow boards from the guy in Hawaii. Anyway, long story short, and we thought we'd trial them out. And we had, I had a jet ski. Wayne had a little Zodiac boat, and it was called Savage Sunday. And everyone was surfing this right-hand breaker. It was 20 foot, and we went to this bomber, which was 20, 25 feet. It was huge, and we actually had Andrew Kidman with us, and Kidman was documenting it, and we pulled
Litmus,
up
right?
next. Yeah, he did Litmus and a lot of other films. Amazing filmmaker, and we came and parked the boat, which was meant to be the channel, And so me and Wayne jumped on the ski and we went out and I started towing Wayne. And Wayne's first wave, he took a very small one, which was on this outer bombie, and it didn't quite break properly. And he ended up just standing out in the middle of nowhere. And I've turned around after towing him and I'm sitting out in the channel looking at this 25-foot crumbling avalanche of whitewater coming down. Andrew Kidman's just sort of concentrating on screwing his waterproof case on his camera, him looking up, and it's just this, like car crash moment, where everything could just slow down. And I was like, oh my God, look at this. So the wave mows Andrew as he dives over the side. Wayne's inside in the impact zone, got mowed by a 25-foot wave, and I'm sitting on this jet ski going, oh my God, I'm just now in charge of one hell of a train wreck, like a complete disaster. So I had to zoom around the back and pick up Wayne, and he's screaming at me and get Kidman, and we unhooked the boat off it broke off the anchor, and we had to basically throw Wayne in the boat, and Wayne's literally rowing over the back of these huge waves just to get out of the way, and I'm fanging in, getting Kidman, throwing him on the boat, get Wayne, hook a rope on the front, and we all putter back to this tiny little boat ramp in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sitting there going, oh no, that was just the worst thing that ever happened. And I look at Wayne and he's run up to the car, got a rope in one hand, runs back down with a new spark plug, puts it in, throws us a musical bar reach, and he goes, let's go. And just and I'm like, no,
we nearly died.
No, we're not doing this, Wayne. No, this is like, he goes, let's go, it's perfect out there. So we virtually
we'll anchor further out.
Yeah, we went out, and this time, we anchored right out the back. And we had the best tow-in session of my life. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
But sure enough, the camera didn't work because it got a bit of moisture in it, and photos didn't
People
come
want to
out,
see
but
some footage of that. Is there anything?
There's nothing.
No, the camera got fucked.
It basically was a very private little wave.
Yeah.
It's called Wayne. It's called Lynchie's Bombie. Wayne surfed it in the
Wayne's World.
70s, 20 feet, and Wayne's a complete madman. And I'm a sort of control madman freak or whatever, but I'll have a go at it. But he was on another level. He's extraordinary. But that was, to this day, what I would probably say we probably all should have died, or we all should have got washed into the cliffs. And it's around
Touch and
those
go.
big old sandstone cliffs. But we're all here to tell the story with
Have a
Jade
chat.
at Barrels of Business.
Yeah.
How to
wasn't
survive
quite
in
a
business
barrel.
and life. A story of survival.
Yeah,
Story of
survival.
survival.
Yeah, so they're all kind of pinnacle. You're transmuting that. It's getting around all these fears which hold us back.
Yeah,
like
the fear coma. I like
Fear
that.
coma.
I like that
I'm
one. Fear
gonna
coma.
remember that one. The
Yeah.
fear coma.
Yeah. And look, there's a guy in the barrel getting towed.
Yeah, that's Pete Mel at
Pete
Chopu.
Mel.
I've got the image reversed on
that's
the other
reversed,
side.
yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a right. That's
Oh.
Yeah, no,
right
it's
on
roast
Chopu.
people. But
He
if you
looks
go
a
on,
bit like me. Should we put a little beard
I
on him?
reckon. Do you know the amount of people that have said to me, "Why haven't you got yourself on there? Why don't you just superimpose yourself?" I'm like, because then I'll pull up a D-bar, paddle out. Everyone see me get out of the van, and then I fucking kook it. And they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
"You knob."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no, we've got Pete Mel on the van,
Yes,
inspiring
very
us
good.
to charge
He
hard.
is amazing, that guy.
Yeah, do you watch that? The Mavericks one, yeah.
Yeah, he is incredible.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. It's been a really
Yeah.
great little camping out.
Camping out.
Yeah.
Out
It's
here
time for a
with
Scott.
Yeti.
Wait, you
Yeah,
haven't-
time for
Yeah.
a pure
Wait,
Scotch.
you haven't done the plug.
Oh, I haven't done the plug. Well, I
haven't
want
done
to
your
do.
plug.
I actually
Get a
want to do where you get to see a little bit of the case man in action.
I
I
might
was
actually have a little.
I was in
not?
I was in Mick Waters' film called Outdated Children, and it shows this aspect of my life, which is I'm an adventure junkie.
Yeah, very nice.
I hit the road, so go and check out Outdated Children, the film, Mick Waters. And can we crack one of these guys for
Yeah.
the Pure Scotch?
He's already gone.
Yeah.
I already have. I mean, it's after.
And these were
it's after
chilled
midday
by
now.
the boys from Yeti over there.
Yep.
And Pure Scott, great Pryor Family Foundation, give millions of dollars a year away to environmental causes and foundations and .orgs and whatever. So thank you, Pure Scott, for a big hearty thank you. Thank you, Yeti.
Yeah.
And, thanks, Patagonia, for the education. You're all great. Cheers.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Woo.
I wanted to ask you a couple more questions around when you were talking about the tribes and what's the modern day equivalent of what can we do? We're not allowed to take them out and throw spears at them anymore. So
nah.
True.
Well, there's an incredible guy. He's called Arna Rubinstein, and he does a fully natural. It's like a men's workshop, but he's out the back of his sort of main arm area. But he's gone global. He's killing it, and his whole approach is it's a father and son thing. He thinks a lot of the disconnect is that fathers demasculinize their boys. They turn them into little chicks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the mums do too. They're too overpowering. So this kind of feminine
mollycoddling.
Yeah, cotton wool butting, and then mum does that, and then dad comes in and tells him he's a fucking soft cock and he's got to play, rugby and break his neck, and So anyway, long story short is that they build this communication back together through 5 nights of sitting around campfires and just and crying and cuddling and saying how much I love you, and it all comes down into this one important factor in life is intimacy. They bringing the intimacy of the two men back together, and it's a lot of suicide is what am I sexually? Where's my gender? What thoughts and feelings and stuff did my parents influence? And so there's a lot of people that are really struggling with their own sexuality and their pressures of their father. They say one of the it's there's lots of arms off the word pressure, but depression is this constant flow of negative judgments on themselves that they're not good enough, and then they go and jump off a cliff because and then some kid just triggers it at school and says, you're fucking this and you're fucking hairs like that, and then they run off and kill themselves, and it's just this ever increasing. But back in my day, we dropped a shitload of LSD and we were on this spiritual search, and we found, and there was moments where it got completely freaky and scary, but essentially I was working with this sort of shamanic guy that was teaching me about my mind and the universe and where we're from, and and so I had this great connection with my soul, and it set me up for my life. And I didn't fear much after that because I'm like, fucking spirit, it's okay, I'll leave my body and I go, And so surfing became, very much a vehicle for finding my manhood, finding my man, becoming man.
Yeah, like that experience, that Savage Sunday, it sounds like an initiation thing, doesn't it?
It was.
It is. It's like it's
your Waimea story sounded like a.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one?
No.
Oh.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Another 20-foot beat down.
The drowning.
No, Casey's had a few.
Yeah. I essentially died. So I went underwater and
gave up.
Basically gave up. And so I went into that kind of into that space that I'd call in between this world and the next world, and it was I completely let go. It's beautiful. I just went into this dream. Okay, let go. Okay, you're drowning. And I had this one thought in my mind that actually a famous lifeguard over there, Derek Dorner, said to me, whatever you do, son, don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. And I had this thing in my brain, and that was all that was rotating.
Stop drinking the water.
Don't drink the water.
The mantra.
So I stopped. I just left, stayed with that, but then I was like...
This is going to be my next paddle out. Don't drink the water.
I survived a, almost 2-wave hold down, kind of popped up. The next one just mowed me, and then basically went into another one of those, and then came up and somehow survived it. But it taught me a lot of things. But and all that other big wave stuff came out of, like I said, there's a fear coma around every experience that you have in your life, and the desires and the passions that we're creating that keep us happy and driven in this world, is that everything around it has some aspects of positivity and negative and fear, and and so I was slowly breaking down all those things, what you call in the surfing paradigm, slowly breaking down the most extreme edge of myself and finding my manhood in amongst all that, as you said, having that initiation into this.
You've talked a bit about like the men's mental health and stuff. Are you doing some work in that space? And
well, definitely, again, like I was dyslexic when I was a young kid, and I definitely went through a really solid bout of men's mental health in my 20s. And I didn't even know what it was, but I had all sorts of I came out of the western suburbs, chased by skinheads, people beat you up, and come from a poor family into Torquay, into this beautiful little cosmic fantasy world where you just go surfing and sit around fires on the beach, and and I still had this residue of this old life and behavioural impressions and trauma from mum and dad. Essentially my father, I suppose, who was a pretty aggressive dad, wonderful man, but just had a flick switch because he was orphaned, all his own story, and as you grow, you understand it, and don't judge him for it. But I had to grow to get to that point. For a long time, I never forgave him, and didn't really think much of him at times, but in the end, I found my own manhood through loving him and forgiving him and actually embracing the masculine in a sense, even though I was doing all these incredible things to prove to him that I was a man.
Yeah.
And I am a man, but I felt like he sort of, in a way, feminized me, gave me a sort of something to think about, something to process, in a world where alpha male is seen as the most important thing. Becoming a man is you got to look like you're tough guy kind of, and I was never that guy. I was always.
I was.
You were.
I grew up that way. My dad's an ex-mercenary.
Is he?
Yeah, and I grew up in the Austinville Caravan Park. So
right, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
So I had a shaved head.
Yeah.
And if someone gave me lip, we give them a smack.
Give him a smack. Yeah. I mean, I
So
learned
you went
boxing.
the other way. You were kind of pretty heavily masculinized, whereas Case was feminized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I grew up with my dad was a single dad too. So
Right.
And so.
And I went and learned
went
boxing. I became a good boxer, and I slapped a few people, and it didn't feel good. And it was all these things that I was adding certain kind of clothing to my colouring as a soul, as a human being. Essentially, I was born pretty sensitive and, whatever. And my dad did that, yeah. And then I went into protection and fear mode and went, okay, I'll go and, learn how to smack heads and look like a tough guy. But underneath it, I'm still soft and gentle. And so, and then I went, I can prove I can be, ride 20-foot waves. And so underneath it, I was shitting myself the whole way. But in the end, I achieved it and found some calm and some peace in it. But in the end, we're all a bit of both. We're all a bit of male. We're all a bit of female, and there's a balance there, as in business and who we are as people. There's a feminine aspect to a business, there's a masculine. There's an aggressive, there's a passive. But in the end, if you let your soul assert, your energetics and your truthfulness and your honesty, and you get through life very quickly. You don't have to fuck around talking, crap to someone because you think you're going to hurt their feelings. You just say, hey, this is how it is. This is how it is for me.
Yeah.
And in the old days, I might have been a bit talking like Dad. Oh, you're a fucking idiot. I can get tough, you see, And I was in this fake, representation of what I call wounded man. And in the end, I think I've become a product of divine man. I think there's a man out there that's in check and in balance with it all, So, I think, that's my cleaner. So.
Now you've got a daughter.
Yeah,
So now
I'm
it's
masculinising her. Yeah. No, she's very
unlike me that play. I started an American football league for women.
Did you?
Oh,
you're a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that when I stopped surfing, I decided
Yeah.
that seemed like a good idea at the time.
No, I got a daughter who's
They do, not in the lingerie. That's what they do in America, isn't it? They have the women's football league. They all wear lingerie.
I'm going to drink some more drink now.
Yeah. Well, I think a man should be proud of his.
I don't think they do it anymore. But
it's not necessarily.
they do. Oh God.
But Mitch Mortaza, the commissioner, got banned from Australia. That's why they don't have it here anymore.
Yeah.
I don't quite get it. I mean, I do get it. I don't get how it is a thing, how it makes it through all of the politically correct sort of barriers in society how does it?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know how we got it through either. I assert my right as a female to run around in my underwear.
Yeah.
Untackle
Yeah.
things.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Like the podcast is finished, but I had more questions for
yeah,
you.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit here and think about the lingerie.
Okay, you do
football.
that.
Yeah.
I just really found it interesting when you were talking about like we're not our mind, we're not our ego, we're not our body.
Yeah.
Have you read oh goodness, what have I got here?
Yeah.
Have you read The Untethered Soul, or what? Is there anything there like you kind of talked about like the observer, and there's some stuff there that touches a lot on the spiritual stuff that
I've not read The Untethered Soul, but it's been on my bucket list. I've heard it's an amazing book, but in my work, one of the main things that in that psychoactive LSD period was that I had a complete awakening kind of in my mid-20s where I had to survive, I actually had to see my mind was in one of the experiences, my mind was so brutally nasty and telling me I actually had what I call my soul come out and talk to me. I had my first meeting with my intuitive, what I call this completely different voice. My mind going da 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 da, and this other voice is going, "I'm your soul, follow me. I'm your divine. Just serve me, and everything will be okay." And I had this. I thought I was schizophrenic because I'm like, "Geez, I'm hearing two voices here. What's going on?" And you're not the mind, you're not the body. You're the spirit soul that is eternal, and you will, if you, and so it was like and I realized it wasn't the body, and I wasn't this little record player that was running off, but I went through life, moving into those spacious moments where I was thinking, I'm just intuitive, but I got really spacey, and I didn't actually use the skill set or the tools that I had, which is your mind's a tool, and so to activate your mind and to be fully in the livingness of the world, the mind is a product of this thing called Maya. It's the material world, and so you've got to engage the mind because it's a product of this world. It lives here, so you use your mind to run your life and your energy and who you are. And so my mind is my great friend. A lot of people say, "Oh, mind is enemy." Or, "Mind is
ego is enemy."
Ego's enemy.
Rather than reading a book, I think Casey's about to write a book.
Yeah.
I'm pre-subscribed. Yeah.
But and so it's becoming in a lot of the great spiritual practices, they talked about becoming third witness. So the soul is witnessing, whether you're in the body or out of the body, the soul is witnessing everything that's going on here in nature's reality, and then it's witnessing the mind. And so the third witness is making the objective call on what your mind is saying to you and what life is saying to you, and you can then make a choice. Because if you just live in the answer of your mind's just giving you the same answers all day, every day. If you don't live in the question, so every 10 seconds you can make a choice and say, here's what I'm questioning you about. So I'm going to ask a question and change reality. You can change and keep creating and making these things completely. You don't just buy into what the shit in your mind's trying to tell you. So that's your third witness, the critic.
The critic.
And
fucking critic.
and that's that's
I
in
can just
the end.
imagine I can imagine you beat the shit out of your critic.
Noisy
You got your critic up
noisy bitch.
by the throat against the wall.
Rotating chicken with your dad.
No,
I see you, bitch.
No, I used to call, because I call my mind the committee. So you've got the dark side of the committee, and you've got the guys that kind of want to help you and do the right thing. But basically, it is a group of pretty wacky fucking memories that ain't really going to keep you in the flow state and in the creative state, because all of this is your nature being completely manifesting, completely creating a dynamic, incredible, authentic and brand new appearances in the world. So your soul can come up with something that's not in the marketplace, that it's unique to you and unique to your story, that you will penetrate it into the world, and it becomes a child of you, not somebody else's bullshit. I'm going to take on their product and I'm going to sell it at 20 and make $15. No, I'm going to start at the bottom of the supply chain and make $120. I'm going to sell that esky at $500, but I'm going to make the whole fucking profit. I don't want to work for the man anymore. I want to work for my creative essence. so I can do the whole thing. So yeah, make great Yeti rugs, or make board covers out of mushrooms.
I love
that I
it.
had too much of.
Well, did you see my board cover in the van? I've got a recycled water bottle
Oh, fantastic.
cover on my tacky, sitting up in the roof
is
of
it
it.
not from is it Mexican, a girl that makes Mexican?
No, that's
No,
Louise.
it's from-
I know Louise.
Louise, yeah.
This is just from
She's in
Surfboard
Lennox.
Warehouse.
So I
Shout
met
outs
Louise
to-
the other night because her boyfriend lives down the road here, and she's making these. Yeah, where's that? It's from Surfboard Warehouse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine's like literally
Louise
from.
is hand knitting them and doing all this amazing
Yep.
stuff. Yeah,
She's great.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe you can connect me.
I will. Yeah, I'm trying to think which it's called. Her name of it means the ocean in Spanish.
Yeah.
Del Mar? No, something like that.
Yeah, I think she's Chinese.
She's
Korean.
what is she? Chinese, Australian. Parents
She's-
are Chinese, but she lived in Mexico for 3 years in a van.
Australian born.
She lived in a van in Mexico
Yeah.
for 3 years with her twin sister, and then decided to start her own.
She's awesome. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Board socks
Yep.
made from her contacts in Mexico.
Oh,
direct-
sick.
Artisan type.
Artisan,
yeah,
oh,
they make up their
yeah.
own fabrics, and then she imports the fabrics, knits them up, and so yeah, I just met her the other night, but should be fascinating to talk
Yeah.
to, because she's a startup business.
Well, also Caroline Catherine from Mata Collective in Lennox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So all of her, we could do them both because they're both basically
would be.
taking stuff direct from
Ooh.
a
Maybe we can do a
third world
four-way.
country. Yeah. It's a vertical. It's like what are you saying? Like a vertical retailing.
yeah, it's
But
vertical
from-
retailing. Yeah,
Direct from a village
Yep.
to the
us.
consumer.
yeah.
Yep.
So vertical retailing is from design right through supply chain. What's your supply chain right to retail?
Yeah.
So it's the creative mind product, into manufacturing, goes to wholesale, retail, and it goes to your own shop. So your own vertical
Yeah.
retailing is having your own flagship store that says Patagonia.
Yeah.
And that's true vertical operational activity.
Yeah.
It's a dream.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
All right, no, she looks like she started
Oh,
to.
here she comes.
She comes in. I don't know if I made.
We better pack
I don't know
up
if I recorded any of that.
Oh no, I was gonna.
Hey there, barrel chasing business owners. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the show. What I would love for you to do, if you feel like you got any value or entertainment out of this episode at all, is to leave us a 5-star review and comment below so that we can share the message and impact as many business owners like you as possible.